Our topic tonight is 5 prompts to jumpstart your writing. I'm happy to welcome back local poet and co-founder of CU Poetry, Jim O'Brien. Jim, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Salam. Okay, let's see. We are going to. So thank you all for being here. I'm going to take just a second to get this where I want it. Fantastic. Thanks for being here. As Salam said, I am Jim O'Brien. Here to walk you through whether you are writing poetry, fiction, even memoir, nonfiction. These prompts you can use in different genres. Some are just to get you writing and started. The handout is just for you to take home. It's got the 5 prompts that we're going to go through in the slides, and when you get home, if you're like, what was that third one? You'll have it with you, at least a summary of it. And then the bonus ones we'll talk about at the end. I do want to mention we have a monthly, almost monthly open mic at the Rose Bowl if you ever want to bring some writing and read some of it there. We welcome anything, again, poetry, short story, memoir, phone book, as long as you're willing to come up and stand up there and read it, somebody will listen to it. And also myself and Cielo and Anne, who are here in the room also, are co-curators of the CU Haiku feature in the Champaign News Gazette, which is a newspaper that is still in print. So if you like to write haiku, you can submit it, and we put one in the paper every week. So we're going to go through 5 prompts. Some of them you'll have an opportunity to share what you wrote if you want. I'm going to do them with you. So after each one, I'll read mine to kind of break the ice, and then you can volunteer to read yours if you'd like. The first one is not one that we will share, and it's just going to be for a couple of minutes, 3 minutes. And it's going to be a free write. Does anybody regularly journal or irregularly? I'm an irregular journaler, but I always have one with me. I've got my journal, and then I have a notebook for drafts when I'm writing poems or working from prompts, and then smaller journals if we're on the road that I can take with me. And then I always try to keep one in my pocket too if something strikes me as noteworthy. I want to make note of it. So, highly recommend you take pen and paper everywhere you go. Although one of our fellow poets likes to use his phone too. So if you're technologically inclined, you can certainly do that. But for this, we're going to take 3 minutes and just write whatever you'd like. If you are using, so since I'm going to be putting this in my journal, I don't have to write this page, does not count. If I was writing this in my book of prompts or potential poems or poem ideas, then I would write at the top, this page does not count, which would then let me put anything I want in there. So, any questions? Does anyone need pen or paper? Salam so kindly in the library brought a lot of that. And if you really don't have any idea what to write about, think of like the last song you heard, or just leave it at that. In my journal, I always put the date and time is. And again, this is not one that I'll be asking you to share, so you can write anything you want. This fuzzy thing on my shirt is a microphone, because they are recording at least my piece of it. just about one more minute. It's just to make sure you got ink in your pen and you're thinking of words. And that is it. So, we're going to be, again, talking about prompts, and I don't always trust the technology. So if you see me looking back, it's to make sure what I see is what you see, and it is magic. I've got 4 types of prompts we'll look at today, not counting the free write that we just did. An ekphrastic, a simple, list, and epistolary, which just means it's in the form of a letter. There's a ton of prompts out there. You can Google, if you don't have a source for prompts and you want one, you can definitely use Google and look up fiction prompts, poetry prompts, nonfiction prompts. And now that AI is everywhere, seemingly so, you can ask AI for prompts, which is on the sheet that you can take home with you with an address where you can do that. So a couple of these, was anybody here 2 years ago, or let's see, maybe 2019 when I did the prompt? Good. That's all right. I only reused 2 of them. But this is one. So ekphrastic, the OED defines ekphrastic as employing, characterized by, or relating to a literary device in which a painting, sculpture, or other work of visual art is described in detail. So it's writing about art. Very famous poem, Ode to a Grecian Urn by Keats, is a poem seemingly about a Grecian urn. But other works of literature that are not just poems have that also. So the Maltese Falcon, for example, was a book and very famous movie with Humphrey Bogart, but on the surface, it's about this statue. Picture Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde, also about a painting. So you can go beyond poetry with these ekphrastics. You can write a story or a movie or a book or a play. Also The Necklace by, I don't do French well, we'll just say Guy Maupassant. All right, there, I did it. Also, that's a short story about, seemingly about a necklace, but it's as much about the women involved with the necklace. This is a painting called The Landscape with the Fall of Icarus from 1555 by Peter Bruegel or Bruegel. And does that show very well back there? It's a big painting, but over here by the boat, there's some feet sticking out of the water, and apparently Icarus has just hit the water after flying too close to the sun. We all know the story of Icarus, right? Had wings and made them with wax and flew too close to the sun despite his father's warning, and then the sun melted the wax and down he came. William Carlos Williams, well-known poet, wrote about that painting. According to Bruegel, when Icarus fell, it was spring. A farmer was plowing his field. The whole pageantry of the year was awake, tingling near. The edge of the sea concerned with itself, sweating in the sun that melted the wings wax unsignificantly off the coast. There was a splash quite unnoticed. This was Icarus drowning. So in that whole, he tries to capture the scene and then the little detail of Icarus. Sometimes the work comes from what's not in the art. Like this one, both the painting and the poem, American Gothic, very famous painting. Poet John Stone wrote this poem, and he talks about what's not in the picture, Just outside the frame, there has to be a dog, chickens, cows, and hay, and a smokehouse where ham and hickory is also being preserved. Here for all time, the borders of the Gothic window anticipate the ribs of the house. The tines of the pitchfork repeat the triumph of his overalls. In front and center, the long faces, the sober lips. So that starts with what's not in the painting, which is a very interesting way to do that. And I do have that in there twice. Okay. So now we're at our first prompt, or our next prompt, which is those two cards I gave out. Take a look at one, or use some image in your mind. I've got two from me, and who did not get cards? Some there. You're welcome. Look those over. If one grabs you, use it. If it doesn't, use something else or any image in your mind. And then we're going to write for 5 minutes, a little ekphrastic challenge. And then we'll share what we came up with. Have any of you done any type of ekphrastic before or considered it? All right. I'm going to set the timer here. about 10 seconds left, so try to bring it home, as they say. How was it? Anybody find it excruciating? Hope not. Oh, good. Did everyone use the card? Or did anyone not use the card? That's okay too. I did use a card. I was blessed to have 2 clowns. So, mine went, the painted smiles hiding who knows what, the gloved hands concealing the fingerprints, the fading wigs bring color to an otherwise gray background. We can feel the oversized shoes, the big personalities, even if it is only an act. Some will find joy, others fear, yet the human under the costume will wake up tomorrow to just another day. So, some people don't like clowns, so I had to put that in there. Anybody want to share what they came up with? That's okay. Sure. Yes. Excellent. That scene seemed very real and a good balance between him and her. So thank you. Hey, next we're going to do some very simple prompts. And these come from a website called Writer's Relief, which, as I said earlier, you can Google prompts and there's tons out there. This particular site will eventually try to sell you their services, their editing services, but they do put a lot of prompts out there. They mention momentous occasions like the day a child was born, the day your faith was shaken, the day you made a decision to give up something or someone you love. Also, they have mysterious places. Imagine you are between stars, between particles, between dreams, between flames in a fireplace. So we're going to jump right back in and choose one of these simple prompts or make one up of your own. And we will write for about 4 minutes on this one. And I'll put those up again. And I'll set the timer. And I'll get my head out of the way. It's a timer, but I'm nowhere near done. But I'll stop. All right, how was that? Not as fun, almost as fun. Interesting. Does anybody want to share what they wrote? Yes, ma'am.
The title is, just as I found out this today, Anne Hart marries James Anderson in 1717. Weddings were simpler back then. No DJ parties, no color-coded bridesmaids, no tone-fit trains. Back then, brides didn't wear white, and grooms had calloused hands and sunburned brows. That's standing at the altar, or even granddad, if you can see them. First, sorry, I can't remember her name. The first of the heart lying in the new world. But like all brides, her eyes were only for the man beside her, the man she loved.
Nice. 1717? Wow. That's good. Anyone else? Mine was The Day the World Changed. Not to generalize too much, but we always wondered, did it have to be this way? Did I have to be in that intersection when the pickup truck ran the red light? Did my hands have to be holding the grocery bags when my glasses started slipping off my nose and shattered? Did he really have no other alternative than to take the gun to school? And then the timer went off, so. Not the cheery place I thought I was going with that, but it happens. Ravi and I were talking before we started about submitting. Are any of you in a place where you're submitting your work or getting any type of peer feedback? Highly encourage it. Again, we have the open mic at the Rose Bowl if you want to have real-time feedback from people. Once upon a time, CU Poetry used to meet in person once a week here. Now that's moved to Zoom. If you want any information on that, I can get you that later. I don't know if Red Herring Fiction Group is meeting or taking folks. But anyway, we're going to move on. So this next prompt is going to be the epistolary prompt, which I might have my slides a little out of order, but it's just a poem in the form of a letter, or a book, any type of piece in the form of letters. Now I've lost the title of it, but my wife just read one where the whole book was a series of letters back and forth between people. This poem by William Carlos Williams, again, is basically a letter to his wife. And if you've read much poetry or had any poetry classes in school ever, you've probably read this one. And this is very often, it's very prime for satire. There's a lot of variations and memes of these, but this is just to say, I have eaten the plums that were in the icebox and which you were probably saving for breakfast. Forgive me, they were delicious, so sweet and so cold. So we're gonna write something, a letter to somebody. It can be a defense, an apology, or simply a description of an incident, real or imaginary, or a retelling of Romeo and Juliet, or any other piece of literature, movies. Just think of some sort of incident that you want to say something to someone about, and you can mask it or not mask it, or just come straight out and have it directly to them. And I'll set the timer again. that is the timer. Before we get into these, I want to talk just for a minute about research and writing. In my piece from that, I came to a place where I needed to cite something specific, and I don't know the correct answer, but I know what I put in there, and I know I can go back later and verify it. It's so easy, especially if you're writing on a computer, to like stop, okay, I gotta look that up right now. You're gonna completely break your flow, so just go with whatever it is, circle it, underline it, make a note of it, whatever, so that you can go back later and look it up. I just saw, I guess it would be a meme, I don't know, but someone pointed out that 20 years ago, the internet, we could go to the internet for a break from reality, but now we go to reality for a break from the internet. So it's just too much, too connected. So that's why I like writing with pen and paper or a typewriter. I'm at home or somewhere else, anywhere. But I really avoid doing my first drafts on a laptop because it's just too easy to get sucked out of it. So, that being said, my epistolary starts to the Champaign Public Library. Dear Champaign Public Library, thank you for being here. Thank you for providing a quiet space in a time of chaos. Though not so quiet that we can't have competing ideas and theologies on the shelves. A little chaos is a good thing when perusing cookbooks that post Chicago-style pizza versus New York or even Quad City. Quad City, what did they do to pizza to get a style of their own? I know Detroit made it square, so let each of these defend their own in the pages of the 400 section of the Dewey Decimal System. And that's the part I had to guess at, because I don't know where the cookbooks are in the Dewey Decimal System. And Salam, if you know. Oh. Thank you. Thank the librarians every time. So that is now going to be in the 641 section. And maybe I'll use that somewhere. Anybody have any luck writing a letter to anybody? Yes. No, not at all.
I waited for 2 hours to see you. The coffee filled my cup slowly, but it was not hot enough to burn. In fact, it was cold. A waste of my dollar, but an inversion I felt I needed. You walked in all cocky, barely hugging me before we sat down. I tried to touch your hand, but the guard said to distance. You talked about your dreams and hopes, which I devoured, but you never said the words I craved, the apology. Next time it will be my turn to talk, and you will listen. You have no other place to go.
Very nice. Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Did you raise your hand? Okay.
In my defense, I do not remember agreeing that we would not give each other gifts for Valentine's Day. I miss you, and when I think about you, I want to give you the world. But grad school is itself a world away, so I hope you can settle for 4-day-old brownies cut into the shape of a heart, a notebook to hold your hopes and fears and dreams until I am there to help you hold them, and my love sent in cardboard. I hope that for now it is enough.
Beautiful. Again, just communicating that, even if the recipients never see it, just bringing that out and getting it on the page is cathartic almost. Any questions so far? Anything you guys want to talk about that we haven't yet, or that you wanted to hear about, or are you able to see ways where this might help you when you're stuck on something? If you're in a long project, you can just check out, let that sit for a day, and do some random prompts just to give yourself a little bit of a cleanse. All right. Our last one is going to be about lists. Make your own list. We're gonna we're gonna write a list piece. Some no, I don't know if it's classic is right, but in poetry there are poems called abecedarians where each line starts with a different letter of the alphabet, and you can use that to make a list of a theme of foods or something. Places you've ever lived, old photos. Why I write. I write because, and then you have your reasons, and that's a list. Or I am from, where you're from, whether it's physical or not. And then, so that seems to be mostly poetry, but there's, and I don't know if you'll be able to read this, probably, maybe, but I'm going to read it out loud anyway. This is from a book called The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien. Has anyone heard of that or read it at times? Yeah, so it's, this particular section is a very, basically a list. The things they carried were largely determined by necessity. Among the necessities or near necessities were P38 can openers, pocket knives, heat tabs, wristwatches, dog tags, mosquito repellent, chewing gum, candy, cigarettes, salt tablets, packets of Kool-Aid, lighters, matches, sewing kits, military payment certificates, sea rations, and 2 or 3 canteens of water. Together, these items weighed between 15 and 20 pounds, depending on a man's habit or rate of metabolism. Henry Dobbins, who was a big man, carried extra rations. He was especially fond of canned peaches and heavy syrup over pound cake. Dave Jensen, who practiced field hygiene, carried a toothbrush, dental floss, and several hotel-sized bars of soap he'd stolen on R&R in Sydney, Australia. Ted Lavender, who was scared, carried tranquilizers until he was shot in the head outside the village of Pankey in mid-April. By necessity and because it was SOP, they all carried steel helmets that weighed 5 pounds, including the liner and camouflage cover. They carried the standard fatigue jackets and trousers. Very few carried underwear. On their feet, they carried jungle boots, 1 pound. And Dave Jensen carried 3 pairs of socks and a can of Dr. Scholl's foot powder as a precaution against trench foot. Until he was shot, Ted Lavender carried 6 or 7 ounces of premium dope, which for him was necessity. Mitchell Sanders, the RTO, carried condoms. Norman Bowker carried a diary. Rat Kiley carried comic books. Kiowa, a devout Baptist, carried an illustrated New Testament that had been presented to him by his father, who taught Sunday school in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. As a hedge against bad times, however, Kiowa also carried his grandmother's distrust of the white man, his grandfather's old hunting hatchet. Necessity dictated. Because the land was mined and booby-trapped, it was SOP for each man to carry a steel-centered, nylon-covered flak jacket, which weighed 6.7 pounds, but which on hot days seemed much heavier. Because you could die so quickly, each man carried at least 1 large compress bandage, usually in the helmet band for easy access. Because the nights were cold and because the monsoons were wet, each carried a green plastic poncho that could be used as a raincoat or a ground sheet or makeshift tent. With its quilted liner, the poncho weighed almost 2 pounds, but was worth every ounce. In April, for instance, when Ted Lavender was shot, they used his poncho to wrap him up, then to carry him across the paddy, then to lift him into the chopper that took him away. So we have these lists, and then break into detail on one aspect of it and put another list in there, and it's list upon list upon list, but it really adds depth to the story. So If you're writing fiction or a poem, do not hesitate to put some list in there because it helps the reader categorize that and just get more depth out of the characters. So, we are gonna write some type of list work, either a poem or a scene or a dialogue, whatever you like. I can go back to some lists there, but you can take, a list and then work it into a piece, or you can work it in, make it up as you go, whatever works for you. All right, that's the timer again. Okay, I'll go first. No title, just jumped right into it. Lists, or I mean, it's a list. That note was for me, sorry. Okay, she meant the world to him. He wanted to share everything with her, every hope, dream, desire. He wanted her to know he loved to cook. Given the chance, he would make her his aunt's meatloaf, the fricassee from the cookbook he found at the library, section 641, the spaghetti sauce he grew up with. Then they could go for a walk, just a few blocks around the neighborhood, past the Sampsons, whose dog almost bit him, the O'Briens, whose lights were always on, the Turners, who had just moved in, and the empty house on the corner. And then I ran out of time. But you see, just by bringing those details in, I mean, we're calling them lists, but it's really the details that are going to give your story, your poem, a depth that it might not otherwise have. Does anyone else want to share anything they wrote? No, that's fine. I don't have it in front of me, but we have other workshops coming up in this series, and Salam is probably going to come up and tell you about them. I want to thank you all for being here. I know on a Wednesday night in February, you never know what it's going to be like, but it turned out to be a nice day. If you have any, the last thing, the AI prompts. So Chat AI, I realized a couple of years ago we gave up free will to algorithms with the internet, and now AI is taking over. So I went to this site, chat.openai.com chat, and just asked for 10 writing prompts and 5 poetry prompts, and a couple of them were kind of duplicates, so I took them out, but there's 13. So you can go there, ask for a prompt. You could even ask it to write you a story if you wanted, and maybe they'll write you a story. So anyway, that's what you can use AI for, and I think that is it. This AI, thank you. Thank you, and yep, that was AI prompts. Sorry, 2 more things. The Shut Up and Write, has anyone heard of that? It's an organization that is nationwide, but they have a local chapter. They meet online now, they've gone to online. So it's just a place to go and write and commit yourself to writing for a period. They currently meet, if you're available on Tuesday mornings, their description is be it book, blog, script, essay, dissertation, resume, melody, poem, or just work stuff. You're invited to write with us. No one will see what you've written or give you unsolicited advice. Instead of just thinking about writing, come and get some real writing done. So they're on Meetup. You can just Google Shut Up and Write Champaign. When you find it, you join them. And it's a good way to commit to writing. So there's that. And then, of course, as I mentioned, the CU Haiku in the News Gazette and their website. And that, yes.
I'd just like to say I'm a member of a writer's critique that actually started from one of these writing workshops. But just got together and decided we wanted to be part of a critique group. So if anyone's interested, please see me afterwards.
Fantastic. Are you guys meeting online or in person? Yeah, that's what CU Poetry had to do also. And so thank you.
All right, well, thank you everyone for coming. A big thank you to Jim, that was fantastic. The next Writers Workshop will be in this room on Wednesday, March 1st, and that's actually going to be an open mic night. I know Jim talked about the Iron Post, so we're going to have our very first open mic night for Writers Workshop. So if you want to participate, you can go to our website, champaign.org, and go to the date for March 1st. And you only need to sign up if you actually want to share your work. So you can share poetry, spoken word, flash fiction. sign up to participate. If you want to just come as a guest, no need to sign up. Just show up that night. So hope to see you there. Thank you for coming.